What if I told you that 6 US states are on the verge of economic collapse this summer? And it's not because of a new financial crisis, not because of a natural disaster. No, it's all because Canadian tourists are staying home. Now, you might think, how could that possibly matter? But trust me, the impact is so much bigger than you think. In 2024, over 20 million Canadians visited the US, injecting a massive $20.5 billion into the economy and supporting over 140,000 American jobs. But in 2025, that lifeline is disappearing faster than anyone could have predicted. We're talking about small towns, bustling cities, even entire industries that rely heavily on the cash, tourism, and jobs that Canadian visitors bring in. And now, without those Canadians showing up this year, things are about to get real ugly. So why are Canadian tourists staying home? Rising political tensions, a shift in travel policies, and calls from the Canadian public to choose alternative vacation spots have led to this massive shift. In fact, destinations like Mexico are becoming increasingly popular for Canadians, leaving US businesses to scramble. But how will this affect some of the most popular tourist destinations in America? Stick around because the answers might surprise you, and they're not pretty. Let's break down the 6 US states that could suffer the most if Canadian tourists don't come back. You might just be shocked by who's on this list and the devastating impact it could have. Ready for the truth? Let's jump right in. Number 6, Maine, the hidden crisis. We're starting off with a state that many of you might not have expected. Maine, a small state that heavily depends on tourism, particularly Canadian visitors. In 2024, Canadian tourists contributed over $1 billion to Maine's $6.2 billion tourism economy. But in 2025, the lack of Canadian visitors is already wreaking havoc. Local businesses, especially in popular destinations like Bar Harbor, Old Orchard Beach, and Portland, are feeling the sting. Restaurants, souvenir shops, and inns that rely on Canadian tourists are reporting cancellations and empty rooms. The summer season in Maine, which is short but crucial for the economy, is facing a devastating setback. Unlike larger states, Maine doesn't have the same volume of domestic tourists to fill the gap. Many small-town businesses are already cutting back on staff and reducing hours to manage the losses. If things don't turn around, Maine could be facing an economic disaster. Will this charming coastal state survive, or is the lack of Canadian tourists going to be the end of an era? Number 5, New York. The Big Apple is feeling the bite. Next up, New York, one of the most iconic tourist destinations in the world. But guess what? Even the Big Apple isn't immune to this tourism crisis. Canadians have always been a vital part of New York's tourism economy, making up a large portion of the 67 million visitors the state receives annually. In 2024, Canadian tourists contributed significantly to the state's $117 billion tourism industry. But 2025 is telling a very different story. Hotel bookings in Manhattan are down, Broadway ticket sales are struggling, and retail shops, especially in border towns, are seeing a huge drop in Canadian shoppers. The ripple effects are far-reaching, and New York is feeling it. With reduced attendance in major attractions and a significant drop in international visitors, the economic impact is deep. Can New York turn things around, or is it headed toward a tough summer? Number 4, Arizona. Snowbirds are staying home. Now, let's talk about Arizona. This desert oasis has long been a favorite of Canadian snowbirds, especially retirees looking for a mild climate and affordable living. In 2024, Canadian tourists contributed heavily to Arizona's $24 billion tourism economy. But in 2025, that dependable flow of Canadian visitors has slowed to a crawl. Snowbird RV parks, which once had long waiting lists, now have empty spaces. Golf resorts are seeing cancellations, and even home sales to Canadian buyers are slowing down. Many Canadians have cited rising travel costs, political tensions, and a complicated exchange rate as their reasons for staying away. Arizona businesses that depend on this steady flow of Canadian snowbirds, like golf courses, healthcare services, and restaurants, are now scrambling for customers. The state is working to attract domestic retirees, but the absence of Canadian dollars is definitely felt. Can Arizona adapt, or is this the beginning of the end for its snowbird economy? Number 3. Florida, the Sunshine State, faces a darkening future. Let's move on to Florida, a state that has always been a top destination for Canadian tourists. From snowbirds to families visiting Disney World, Florida relies on Canadians for massive chunks of its tourism economy. In 2024, Canadians contributed over $4 billion to Florida's economy. But in 2025, that influx of Canadian dollars has drastically dropped. With airlines cutting flights and Canadian tourists opting for destinations like Mexico, Florida is feeling the impact. Local businesses in the hospitality sector are ringing alarm bells, especially as theme parks in Orlando report a drop in international attendance. From souvenir shops to beachfront cafes, the effects are widespread. Despite efforts to boost domestic and Latin American tourism, Florida is struggling to replace the sheer volume of Canadian visitors. Will the Sunshine State get its sparkle back, or will it remain in the shadows? Number 2. Michigan. The heartbeat of cross-border travel is slowing. Michigan's relationship with Canada goes way back, and it's one that has always been financially crucial. From Detroit to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan has relied on Canadian tourists for everything: shopping, sports, and even fishing trips. In 2024, Canadian visitors brought billions to Michigan's $25 billion tourism economy. But 2025 is shaping up to be a very different year. Cross-border traffic has slowed dramatically. The bustling weekends in Detroit's malls, casinos, and lakefront rentals have turned into empty streets and empty pockets. Local businesses are reporting revenue drops of up to 30%, and tourism events are suffering as a result. For Michigan's border towns, where tourism is the backbone of the economy, this decline isn't just inconvenient, it's catastrophic. Even though Michigan's tourism department is trying to pump some life back into the sector with domestic travel initiatives, there's no replacing the volume and spending power of Canadian tourists. Michigan is in serious trouble. Will it be able to recover, or is the damage already done? Number 1. Vermont. The tourist heartbeat is fading last, but certainly not least. We head to Vermont, where the tourism crisis is already hitting hard. Known for its serene landscapes and iconic maple syrup, Vermont has long depended on Canadian tourists, particularly from Quebec. In 2024, Canadians contributed millions to Vermont's $3 billion tourism economy, spending money on everything from cozy inns to local restaurants. But in 2025, Vermont is facing an economic nightmare. Airline bookings from Canada are down by over 70%, and road trips have dropped by 23%. Local businesses like bed and breakfasts, outdoor adventure companies, and farmers markets are seeing their revenue plummet by 30%. The hardest hit are small towns that rely on the tourist dollar to stay afloat. Will Vermont be able to recover, or will it become yet another casualty of this economic downturn? The truth is, Canadian tourists aren't just visitors, they're lifelines to these states. Without them, entire economies are in jeopardy. From Vermont's maple syrup to Florida's theme parks, the absence of Canadian dollars is sending shockwaves through local communities. So, what happens next? Will these states find a way to recover, or are they on the brink of a summer they'll never forget? For all the wrong reasons. Thanks for watching, and stay curious. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next video might just blow your mind even more.